Right, well, let's get started. I'm Rachelle Wilhite, the designated broker of Best Choice Realty, and we're going to be talking about pricing tonight with Shannon. We've got some questions we're going to go over that are most commonly asked by us as managers, and going to give you some tips and tricks on how to deal with some of the questions that you're getting from your clients. So we got a full 12 slides tonight.
Not very much, but we'll be efficient. These are the questions we're getting from agents right now, consumers, top of the deck, right? What's the competition doing? What do I tell a seller? What is the seller looking for? Is my buyer overpaying on the property?
I just got that one last night.
What do these words mean? This is probably from our newer agents. How long does it take to prepare a CMA or pricing analysis or to prepare for an appointment? When do I give a price to a seller? Is it before I meet with them, after I meet with them, while I'm meeting with them? Are you doing a CMA for your buyer? Do I need to do a CMA for my buyer?
So we're going to tackle most of these questions throughout the presentation, but before we do, I'm not covering AVM. It's called an AVM as an automated valuation model, which is very much like a chat GPT or a Zestimate. That's what an AVM stands for. And the other thing that a lot of people are asking me for is, do we have a cloud CMA account? Yes, we do. If you need access to the account, let me know. If you want your own account with Cloud CMA, that's not hard to set up. You just need to let us know in the office. HomeBot is a monthly kind of digest. A lot of consumers love it because it connects with their maybe what they paid for the home and it overlays with the mortgage market. So it's a kind of a cool tool, but you need a lender to sponsor your HomeBot account. It's a lender and a real estate agent getting together and providing like a monthly digest. That's what that is as a home bot. Pretty cool little system. Again, that's a whole separate webinar, but a lot of people have asked about that as well. So if you're looking at just some of the basic CMA, we're going to talk about that and kind of the other questions here on this slide.
A CMA. So what is it? What's a CMA? And this is kind of fun. We have the visuals on here.
I told Shannon, I said, break out the apples and the oranges
This
because
is
it's got,
yeah.
we have too many people right now sending us CMAs where it's like an apple and an orange, they're not the same. And we're talking like apple and maybe pineapple, Shannon, not even an
Yeah,
orange.
they're not in the same classification. I think one of the biggest things, like when we have a home that was built in the 60s, and then I saw a CMA where they're pulling a new construction on their CMA, and I go, oh, that's
Not
not
even
an apple.
close.
That's definitely not an apple. So yes, a CMA is in essence how we're arriving at the market pricing. It's especially important right now. We're having a lot more competition when we're going on listing appointments. So there's agents bringing other pricing to the table. So we want to make sure that we have apples to apples or are able to speak to the numbers. We can't manufacture the pricing, and we need to be able to support the price that we're proposing for them to put on the market. CMAs are strongly influence how the seller is looking at you and how you are posturing yourself to them. So if you are not coming with pricing, have not done your research, or coming to the appointment with absolutely nothing in your hands, they immediately are thinking, did they even prepare? Are they even wanting to list my home? Do they know what they're talking about? We don't want to even have those questions on their mind when they meet with us in person. So making sure that you're prepared with a CMA presentation is going to be important.
Don't do a full CMA, though. Don't do all the work because a full CMA takes me several hours actually to complete if you're doing it the right way. But so you shouldn't have to do a full CMA unless you are 95% sure that you're going to get the listing or that your buyer is going to be offering on the subject property. Maybe they're like narrowing things down. Do I do a CMA or a buyer CMA for all of the homes that I show? Absolutely not. But once we start to narrow things down and we're down to like the top two, then I will do a buyer CMA so that they know that they're not overpaying for the home. So that's the kind of rule of thumb I want you guys all to have is don't overwork yourself, but definitely know your numbers. Okay, Shannon,
What a CMA is not. So this is kind of interesting. We have if you're in the Northwest MLS territory, we have this tool where when you go into your listings and you select properties, when you end up going to print, a lot of agents will get stumped because they see an option that says single family CMA line. And
You're thinking like, this is the
this
one.
is not a CMA. Even though it says CMA, it is not a CMA. It does not allow you to make adjustments. It's just a list. It does not give you pictures. It does not give you anything else other than just the information about that property. So this is not a CMA. Even though it says CMA, it is not.
Every MLS, I swear, has this sheet.
Yes.
And so Shannon and I will go on appointments. In fact, we went on one just last week. And the lady was like, let me show you what the other agent brought us. And wouldn't you know it?
It looked just
It
like
looked
this.
just like this. And but except it had more. Like they thought that maybe if they had more listings, that it
Ouch.
would kind of average out and it would get them to the true number. I had a field day with that one. Shannon was
Yeah.
laughing. She was trying to hold back, like, oh my gosh, what's Rachelle gonna do?
Well, and the poor client too, because they're looking at it as, well, there's like 50 properties that are listed out here. What does that mean for me? How does that compare to my home? Have you done the research? Have you looked at these properties? What do they even look like? This is just a list of addresses. It means nothing to me. So, yes, this is not a CMA. It's not a list of properties on the MLS. A CMA is not a Zestimate. It is not a Redfin valuation and is not a Chat GPT pricing. Now we've got to throw chat in the mix now too.
I like chat,
But this is
but
not a
it's not a
CMA.
CMA.
You shouldn't be basing our pricing analysis based off of what an aggregator is doing for us. We still have to do the human research on this.
And I mean, we're going to throw mom under the bus. Mom thought when we were going to list one of her investment properties, she was so sweet. She got all of her stuff ready for us when we were going to put her home on the market in August. And she got the tax assessed value, like the little card that you get in the mail.
From the county.
And she's like, I already did the work because I didn't want you guys to overwork yourselves. And we're just like almost laughing
No.
because that's not how we do it. It's not based on the tax assessed value. So if you have sellers or buyers that think it's based off the tax assessment, no, that's not a CMA. It's not what we do. So be
Yeah.
gentle with them.
I think be gentle, but then also be upfront too. This is in essence, you would have to explain what a CMA in many cases is to the consumer and explain what you are doing to them. I've done some research, more than just pulling a list of properties for you. I've done an analysis. Zestimates are fun. Thank
Yeah.
you, Rachelle. Zestimates are fun. Your home is looking like it's going to be valued about right here on Zestimate. I think, ha 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 ha, let's actually go into what this means for you and then lead into your CMA.
This is something we put together I think it was last year at this time. So we actually did the work for our investor. And we put this little grid together. I mean, you could probably easily do this on Chat GPT now, but that kind of gave her an idea. But once we are ready to go on the market, that's when we will do a full analysis. So we just stepped into it and said, here's what we're pulling from Zillow and from, at the
Redfin.
time, Redfin. You could easily do a quick little sheet like this and send it and tease your sellers, but just let them know that, hey, once we get closer within a 30-day window of going on the market, that's when we'll want to spend some time and go over a full CMA.
Yeah. So I would say this is probably a nice idea if you've got analytics where it gives them a quick idea, but it's still, you can even see in our notes, we said Zillow and Redfin are using condos and garages, incorrect averages. They are comparing apples to oranges. It does not equate. So, yeah, even Zillow and Redfin are not, they're not taking into account the similar properties.
Yeah, Shannon brings up this good point. This notes is showing our local expertise. So
Yeah.
make sure you're doing that, not just giving them the aggregates. They can do that themselves.
Yeah, at this point they could use ChatGPT to get a number, but we need to make sure we set ourselves apart as the local authority.
So we're in this period of time where if you haven't started looking at books, reading some things, trying to train yourself on working in a different environment, now would be the time to do that. Carrie Bodley is a friend of mine. I'm not even sure if he is still practicing, but I learned from him during the '08 crash how to properly price homes so that they sold. So I was able to weather the storm. We taught a 3-day class. Carrie came and taught it in Salt Lake City, for example, when I was there in 2009 and 10. It was one of our highly sought after classes. I think you can buy the book. It's how the real estate market really works. And then we had built some classes and some training on it. So I'm going to train you on some of the top 3 things that I pulled from the book. You certainly can do some more research on your own. But the competitive marketplace is where we're going to, where you need to really look at your pricing. And instead of just thinking of just doing a comparative market analysis and looking at the solds like an appraiser needs to do, we're going to be going to this marketplace eyes wide open, realizing we actually need to look at the competition, look at the actives, look at what's going to show up in the marketplace the day after Christmas or the first week in January. You might see a huge increase in that neighborhood, and you need to know those numbers so that it gives you more confidence when you're speaking with your seller or your buyer. So that book explains it. We'll break down the top three things on it.
Yeah, and we may not be in a 2008, slump like it was back then, but the tactics are still very, very much applicable. So for those of you that have not been in that kind of marketplace, we can still kind of learn from the veterans what was working back there.
Yep.
Because if we're kind of in that middle round where we're like, are we value, are we price, right?
So what's the number one takeaway that was brought up in the book? Shopping competitively. You can only buy what is for sale today. So you have to look at some of the pendings and expired. So if you have a buyer who is like, I'm not finding what I want on the market right now, it's probably true. It's probably not on the market. So you're going to need to call the pendings and see how solid. I would say 25% of those pendings are at risk of failure. I know because I've been able to find and write up a backup offer and be able to slip somebody into a backup situation. And expireds most likely will go
Well,
back on the
relist.
market and relist in January. So you can sometimes find some shadow
So
inventory.
if you're doing a CMA and you're trying to find the right properties, it might be helpful to even throw in the cancellations and the expires when you're doing your research, just so you can see what else is there.
Yep. And in the book, Carrie talks about the shopping area. That becomes extremely important. You guys have all been taught, if you've been licensed since, I don't know, 2016, 17 maybe, you've been taught to do CMAs by just doing a radius and pulling like an appraiser, start small and then grow your area. The problem with that is that the shopping area, when you have more inventory and you're in a buyer market, the buyers are not limited to the geography and the neighborhoods like they were in the past. So your competition is located within the buyer shopping area, meaning you should, if you're going to do a pricing analysis, you should consider on this particular map on Yesler Way, you may want to find something that's closer to the freeway or closer to the waterfront. That might
Yeah.
be the type of area you need to be looking at and look at all the competition that started to pop up. So you need to look at the subject a bit more closely and realize, is that the shopping area? Maybe I need to punch it up to, for example, Northgate, as well as down on the south part of the
Yeah.
city because of the type of shopping area. My buyers are looking for condos that don't have dues that are so dang high. I know
Yeah.
there's a lot of
Well,
people
and we had
watching.
one where a buyer was looking from Chehalis way the heck out to Carbonado. I mean, they're looking all over
Yeah,
because their price point was that type of property. They're 1.1 to 1.8. They want that type of acreage. They want that.
yeah,
Sometimes it's not going to be within half a mile. I mean,
it's
they're going to
not.
be within an hour or two of each other because they don't care about, they're working from home or things like that.
So when
It's
you're
different.
working with the seller, always consider what is the buyer shopping for? Think of the end user when you're pricing and pull your comparables that way.
Right. So if you can trying to rationalize a $500,000 price point, where are $500,000 homes?
Yep.
Yeah.
Drive by the subject property and the neighborhood. I think Candace and I have told you guys, trained you all on driving by the subject property, at least knowing what you're dealing with. And then tour the comparable properties if you are looking for a true comparison. And then ask the right questions to the seller. Make sure that you have your seller intake. We already have one that you can download if you're not using some good questions to uncover some of the condition or the upgrades. You need to know your subject property before you do a CMA. So if you've toured a buyer's property, that makes it easy, right? Or a listing, and they're going to be offering, you already know because you're shopping. So you
Yeah.
know how to kind of compare. But unfortunately, sellers are so rigid and they have not compared. And it might be helpful if your home is still sitting on the market and they're not willing to reduce their price. You may even schedule some showings for them and take your seller to go look at the competition. That might be all they need to do to decide whether they take their home off the market or they do a reduction in price depending on their motivation. Let's go to the next. So let me go over the two different, this is from the book. So today's competition determines today's value. That is selecting your comparables. It's how to look at the difference between the common system, which is on the right-hand side, which is more for the sellers type of market, versus the competitive system. In the competitive system, you're going to want to look at a typical shopper's buying area. We kind of already talked about the geography. Yes, you can go outside the typical quarter mile to find the shopping area of your particular home. I've done that, for example, with one of you that had a listing in Des Moines, for example, and people will look all the way down to Federal Way and they'll look all the way up to West Seattle and we'll look at the price range and determine what is the typical shopper's buying area based on the price point or the amenities of the subject. And then make the adjustments based off that. And that's all it takes. We'll notice that we saw an influx of listings that came on the market, such as in Federal Way. And that's why her home has not sold in Des Moines. So you look at the area and you look at the shopper's buying area and make the adjustments. Make sure you're looking at the criteria. Any property considered to be in competition is something you should be considering. And then also look very strongly at your actives. Watch it almost like a buyer would. If you're entering a listing into the marketplace right now, you're going to probably want to also do a save search for yourself so you can see all of the actives that are going to hit the market, say in the next 30 to 60 days. That way you're well prepared to have those kind of open conversations with your sellers that are resistant to reduce their price. The longer it sits on the market, the harder it will be to sell because of the market window.
I think the emphasis too on this, the competitive versus common, we've just been so trained. Over the last 10 years, we've been so trained, focus on the solds, focus on the solds. What are they selling for? What are they selling for?
Yeah, make sure it's in
And
the
it's
file. And
it's gotta be, we are putting more emphasis now on the active properties on the market because there is more inventory now. If we've got a home in a community and there's four of them that are active on the market, we've got one for 420, one for 450, and one for 410. And seller wants to list it for 495. Can we rationalize that knowing that the competition is under 450? We have to look at the active comparables in order to make sure we're not off base, or we need to be able to rationalize it in that way. Maybe this one is so much more improved. It's done the full kitchen, all the other ones have not, it has to make sense.
Yeah. So then once you've selected your comparables, and again, think of it more like a buyer's, like what are buyers looking for? What's the shopping area? Once you've selected your comparable properties, then you do need to adjust the factors. Think like an appraiser when you get to this point. Make sure you are comparing as close as you can to apples or oranges. Like we want to keep it round and we want to keep it in the fruit family with that analogy. But will this add value or enhance? Kind of look at your CMA and look at the comparables. Don't just average it. You're going to want to look at each of the comparables and make the appropriate adjustments. Square footage is very helpful,
It's
depending
also
on
one of
the
the
area.
first things you would start with. So
Yeah.
if without having seen the property at all, you can do a square footage adjustment. This is
Very
why
simple.
appraisers like it, is because they technically don't even need to look at the subject or the comparable property in order to do the adjustment. The other things that are on here, land, kitchen, fireplace, half bath, full bath, deck, patio, garage, anything else that's on here, these are things that are what either the seller has told you before your appointment or you have viewed while you were at the property. Maybe that was when you were touring the home with the buyer, if you're doing a buyer CMA, or this would be after your appointment if you're revising before you're going active on the market, say. And yeah, this is very much accurate. If you're looking at a competitive analysis versus a comparative, and you're looking at a property that has 1.5 acres compared to one that has 10 acres, is that going to be an adjustment in pricing when the home down the street is 8 acres? We're comparing things. It's got to be similar, and we need to do adjustments for those types of things. Kitchen, bathrooms, half bath, plumbing. I mean, these are all things that we can adjust. These are things that are ideas in terms of price ranges. Obviously, the price point could change depending on where you're
Well, if
at.
you're doing like a $5 million piece,
A $10,000 kitchen obviously is not going to be
you have
that.
to know it. But generally speaking, this would be like I would say
Typical
your
entry
typical
level.
average
Yeah.
3 bed, 2 bath type of thing. Now, condos, obviously a little bit different, but square footage still works for condos. Appraisers are still using that. Things to consider that do not add a lot of value would be the landscaping. People have done a lot of appliance work, some expensive fixtures, unless we're dealing with some luxury
Yeah.
homes. But generally speaking, that's not going to generally add very much to the property's price.
The best way I've understood landscaping, because we've had some people where they are legitimate landscapers and I put $50,000 in terracing my property and doing XYZ. All it takes is one person living in that home and not mowing the lawn for like 5 years, and now the property is not the way it was,
Yep.
versus a bathroom where they have done the full gut and they did the whole tile and they did the whole surround and everything like that. That obviously, if it's maintained, will carry over to the next homeowner.
So where we see a lot of people making mistakes on the adjustments is number one, they don't adjust and they put a price on the market and they're comparing, say, with the neighbor down the street that sold maybe 3, 4 months ago who did do the bathroom updates.
Yeah.
And they didn't take that into account. So when they throw up a price, they're thinking, oh, the sellers are expecting that they're going to get it sold for 550, when in reality, they didn't do the deck. The deck needs to be replaced,
or the roof.
and the roof needs to be done. And so all of a sudden you have to take some deductions after the fact. So it's easier to do the adjustments before you quote a price than to do it, after. Then you're backpedaling. It doesn't look so good.
And same thing with appliances too. If you're looking at a standard 3 bedroom, 2 bath, I mean, I would classify it as somewhat entry level for the most part in most areas. If you've got the top of the line Viking Sub-Zero appliances, does that really make sense for the area you are? If you're in an area, say like Kirkland, maybe that is what that area demands. But most of the areas that doesn't equate to necessarily added value.
Over improved. Candace, before we move to the next slide, is there anything that you're seeing you review a lot of CMAs as well?
I think what you guys covered though, it's, we need to pay attention to the active, the expired, the canceled, and the happenings now, more so than like the sold 6 months ago. So you guys hit it on the nail.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And I think this is our last thing, considering the window of opportunity. Rachelle's talking about that critical area. If you're in King, Pierce, Snohomish, that I-5 corridor, I mean, we're looking anywhere between 35 to 45 days, average days on market right now. So that would equate to be about that 4 to 5 week window. If nothing has come through within that 4 to 5 week window to get a buyer, then in essence, we need to do something because the activity is highest right there. So if we're not getting the activity, we're not getting the buyers, the offers at that point in time, then we need to probably do some sort of adjustment.
Well, when you talk about Idaho being almost double that, right?
Yeah.
Then that window of opportunity actually
expands
it's
out.
a less, it's like 8 weeks of the window of opportunity. So it's a little bit different. You just kind of see it differently. And you got to prep your sellers for that window of opportunity.
Testing the market right now does not work. It doesn't. If someone wants to sell for $900, I'd like to sell for $900,000. Wishing it is not going to make it actually happen. So testing the market is no longer something we can do. It closes that window out. It just shrinks it incredibly. So that bell curve that you see there, it's like it doesn't even happen.
All right, let's go to the next slide. So we've got some scripts. I think last week a few of you gave me some feedback. They're like, you want more scripts? I'll try to give you some more scripts next year. I had Shannon and I, we play with these ones. These are the ones that we've been using and they are working. So hi seller, I just wanted to call and see if there was a time we could go over the new intel I'm getting in regards to the 2026 market.
And I would respond and saying, oh, okay, well, what are you thinking? And
they're thinking,
they want a production.
The people that are on the market, they're thinking, I'm not dropping my price. You will need to add a lot more information once you meet with them or you talk to them on the phone because they're already thinking, put up the red flag, put up the wall. I'm not adjusting my price. That's what sellers really are thinking, but you have to convince them when you meet with them. The more you do, don't do this by text. I would say that flops. I've tried it. I've made it flop before. So it's best to actually have a conversation.
And I would say don't do it over the phone unless you've had a chance to have review together with them the numbers that you're seeing as well. If you've got graphs or things to show with them, send it and then call them.
Yeah. Yeah. And a lot of people, they talk to me during the end of the summer, Rachelle, I think after the first of the year, we'll, so what's the harm? Even if you haven't, I just wanted to call and see if there was time we could go over what the new intel that I'm receiving for 2026. You have some time. Yeah. When were you thinking? When we meet, I'll plan to bring a full CMA so we can review it. or when we meet, I'll plan to go over the market statistics that I
including the
pulled.
showing
Activity.
feedback, the activity, the maybe what we've done for advertising in the last couple weeks, so we can review all of that together.
So script A is great. It's just it's setting them up for what are they going to expect when you sit down with them or when you do a Zoom with them. When we meet, I will plan to do X, Y, Z so we can review. No, no pressure, no obligation. In fact, I'm telling some of my sellers to wait, right? It really depends on where they're at in the process and how ready their property is. Some of them need some work done to the
Some
property.
need some time to clear out some of their stuff.
And some of them need to be dried out.
Yeah, that too.
It's just a fact.
Yeah.
So script B, my company, I spend a tremendous amount of time and money in properly marketing your property. Do you have any questions for me at this time? That's a great little script that I've used. And then the script C, I cannot tell you where the market is doing, what it's doing nationally, but I can share what's going on here locally because I watch it closely. And I can give you some more perspective on your upcoming plans. How does next week look like? How does it look like after the holiday? That's kind of the lead-in script to get you in front of the client. So A, B, or C has been working for me.
Don't
Definitely,
do it over
Shannon.
text. Do
Don't do it
not do it over text. No. And same thing for buyers. So a lot of people don't know when to insert a buyer CMA or how to introduce it. Same thing with sellers. You don't do this over text. And you definitely need to do this more than what you've done in the past. So Candace and I were talking right before we jumped on here. It's like, oh, here we go, buyer CMAs. It's like back in 2017, 18. We have to be doing this more. These are no joke, straight up copy paste from some of the things we've been getting from agents that were saying, I don't know what to say to this client. This house down the street just dropped their price, but we're considering a different one. Which one's a better deal?
When you start to hear that type of thing, you gotta do
a CMA.
A CMA.
The seller's giving $15,000 in concessions. Is that going to be enough? We had another one where new construction started building down the street.
Yep.
Is that going to affect the value of this one? Should we be paying less or more? Et cetera, et cetera.
That's just they're calling out. They're screaming for you to do a buyer CMA.
Please give me information, is what they're saying. So if you get something like that, you should say something like, let me take a look. When do you have, again, let me know when you have some time so we can go over the numbers together. When we meet, I'll come prepared with a buyer CMA so we can evaluate them before taking the next step. If you're not in the habit of doing it, use this script. If this is already part of your practice, when should you insert this? If they're walking through the house saying, I think this is the house, do you think, is this going to be a good deal for me? You go right to the script. You know what? Let me take a look when I get back to my home office. I'll call you later tonight when we review the offer, just to make sure that you feel confident and not overpaying for the property.
It's good. All right. That was a wrap.
That's a wrap. Right at 6 o'clock.
I love it when deals come together.
I know. So it's just, Candace, did we have anything we missed you wanted to add to before we kind of go into some questions?
Great one. Nancy's got a good
No, this was all good. This was all good.
How do you adjust for lot size?
The buyer CMAs are back though. I'm still kind of hung on that.
I know.
Gotta get my act together.
So Nancy had a great question. I will respond to Nancy's question. She said, how do you adjust for the lot size? She's doing an adjustment perhaps for that. So back in the day when the house was built, there was a premium sometimes that lots would get. Location, 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 right? It's talked about in a lot of real estate books. So you start with the lot or the land value, right? And you work towards that. So if let's say we were dealing with an acre of land, what's the acre of land worth in your particular area, Nancy? And is the acre of land, is it all flat? And is it truly an acre? Or is it like treed on half of it? So it really is only a half of an acre of usable. So you first have to understand, what do you adjust for lot size? There's more questions you need to ask before you can determine how to adjust for that particular lot.
Well, and what's best use for the property too? If you've got a property that is maybe an acre and then you've got other comparables that are showing maybe half an acre, but what's usable, most of it's wetlands, most of it's treed. I mean, in essence, you're comparing to a half an acre property.
So you should be looking at, when you're looking at acreage and there's a house on it, I would say you may want to find a different comparable than to try to do an adjustment, say for an acre versus a half an acre.
And
If you're
same thing for big properties. If you're comparing 2 acres, 3 acre properties, and you're not finding the comparables, you can take into consideration ones that are an acre, but maybe you need to go further out. People that are buying 3 acre properties may be looking further than what you're thinking.
Yeah. So it's a little bit more of an art than a science on that, Nancy. But
Okay.
just looking at like new construction, so that's a little bit different, right? They're on like cookie cutter lots, 7,000, 8,000 square foot lots.
Yeah.
In that case, I told one of our agents that called me this morning, I said, have you contacted, they just did a price drop on this new release, and it's like $50,000. It's a lot.
Oh, uh-huh.
And she's like, "Am I my buyer's overpaying?" I said, "Contact that agent, the listing agent, ask them the one that sold in September, was that at a lot premium?" And so I hopefully she's doing that, but that usually will give you an answer on why the lot is more. It could be have a green belt, it could be closer to the retention
Next to
pond.
the park, we've
It could
seen.
be there's a reason why they price them that way, and that will help you and understand why is it $50,000 less, right? Is understanding the lot premium. And
Okay,
then
so
when you,
it's a
yeah,
little bit different then because I know on the square footage when you're doing the house, you have what, a $35
correct.
Yeah,
50. So
that's very black and white. I mean,
yeah,
quick calculation you do right away. With
right.
considering lot size, you have to ask either more questions or have you viewed the property before you can do your assessment.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank
Yeah.
you.
Yeah. Hopefully that was helpful.
And then Chen had the same question. What about a 1.5 acre lot versus a 7,000 square foot lot? I think we just answered that question.
Yeah. You want to compare 1.5 with closer to one, like a 1 acre or a 2 acre, and then do some adjustment based on what an appraiser would do. So if you have trouble with some of these things, a simple email over to me, to Shannon, to Candace, Virginia. We have all been taught by appraisers on how to do some adjustments based on the area or location that you're working on. We just want you to pick the right subject, make sure the subject is right, find comparables that are alike as much as you can find,
Choose the right
and then we can
comparables.
assist you with doing the adjustment if
Yeah.
needing to be.
Santos, so that's a great question. He said, how about daycare, adult family homes, CMA? How does value end up happening for that? It's a great question. We get this a lot when we have adult family homes, when we have maybe a home business that's selling along with commercial property. Could we sell them together? Does that impact the value?
It does.
I think in some cases it comes down to what's best use for the property, and is the business tied to that, or is it really truly running separately? We have one where the business it has a business segment and then it has the property, and it's like what's best used for it is for them to actually be sold separate. But sometimes it does affect the value if they go together.
Need more questions, Santoso, on that, right? Would be a cost approach, right? Where we're looking for income that's coming from the business, or would it just be a market value approach, a sales approach?
Yeah.
Most of the time it is a sales approach on those adult family homes, but not necessarily with the daycares. Right?
Yeah.
That comes with income, and that comes with a little bit more of analysis.
Well, it depends on where they are too. A lot of the daycares, if they've been converted from single family homes, is it really best suited to be sold in that way, or is it best to be retrofitted back into a single family home? So it just depends, I think, on where it is and what's best for the property.
When in doubt, you can always contact an appraiser in the area. And
Oh, they love your phone calls.
I mean, we get their phone calls.
I get them too. They're like, how
All
did
the
you
time.
get that price? And I go, oh, you're going to save you my phone.
Yeah. And so,
Yeah.
okay, hopefully that was helpful.
Okay.
Okay, that was a wrap. Anything else, Candace, that we didn't cover?
No.
Okay.
Good.
Okay.
Have a great week,
Thank
you
you guys. Happy holidays. I know we've
Yes.
got a lot going on.
Yes.
We are back on Monday. So that's our next training is this coming Monday. We're still on. So stay tuned for that. If not, have a great week. Good luck this week. It's still very busy. So this is, I think, our banner December we've ever had. We've never had a December like we have right now. So keep up the good work, you guys.
Good
Okay.
stuff.
Have a good one. Good to see you guys.
Happy holidays.